Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to another edition of Intuitive Angling, and really appreciate you guys watching today's video and spending a little time with me. Always grateful for that. And guys, today we're going to be giving tips and advice on how to think like a bass and why it is important to learn how to think like a bass. It's like every great angler I have ever met, whether they know they are or aware of it or not, they think like a fish. And I'm going to give you guys a little bit of opinions on my part on that based upon what I've learned about fish, and we're going to get into that in today's video. Also, guys, just want to remind you today is Black Friday, and I just want to remind you of Tackle Warehouse's Black Friday sale they got going. Guys, they have deals up to 75% off on fishing tackle there, and I'll put my Tackle Warehouse Black Friday link in the description of this video. If you guys use that link there, it's a good way to support the channel and get you guys some good deal on tackle, so much appreciated with that. Okay, guys. Sort of give me my opinion on this about how to think like a bass and why it's important, because I've always done this, man. I've always tried to get inside of a bass's mind, and I think a lot of times you read studies from conservation departments or whatever about bass behavior and movement, and they make it sound like they know everything about what a bass thinks about and how they can see and all that type of stuff. There's so many mysteries out there, guys. We do not know what is going on through a bass's mind or brain. I think a lot of times, from what I've seen from anglers, they tend to they tend to discredit a bass's intelligence, and they tend to make them relegate them to some little stupid pea-brain creature that doesn't know anything other than how to make other bass and eat. That's not the way it is, guys. I think bass deserve a lot more respect than a lot of anglers give them. They have just as much right to be on this planet as we do. They're just another species out there just sharing this planet that we have floating around out here in the Milky Way galaxy. So from that standpoint, I always try to, I don't ever try to, make myself feel or think that I'm better than a fish, because, they've been here longer than humans have. They've been here for over 3 million years, according to, a lot of the scientific studies I've read on it. So anyway, let's get into how bass thinks here a little bit. First of all, one of the things I do know about bass for sure is that they are individuals, just like people. I mean, bass are not, there's not one description fits bass as far as their behavior, moods, and movements. Bass are literally just like people out there. Some people are antisocial. Some bass are antisocial and they live their whole lives alone. Some bass, are very social and they live in schools all their life and everything in between. Some bass they got little wolf packs they hang around. It's like they got buddies they hang around. It's really super similar to humans out there, because I know for sure, again, from some studies that, I've read on radio tracking, that some bass will live by themselves on a lay down tree their entire life. And they're never around any other bass. It's just them. And then other bass, like the bass life scopers catch, they school up in big groups and they get out in open water and they chase shad their whole life and they live in a school their whole life. And some bass go back and forth between that. Some of them hang around with little groups of 2 and 3 fish. So from that standpoint, you have to, when you're trying to get inside of a bass's mind, realize that every single bass is different as far as how they live their life and how they approach their underwater world out there. So I think that's a very basic premise that you have to realize when you're thinking about and trying to get inside a bass's mind and think like a fish. Now, first of all, here's a couple different things that I have personally found about what I think a bass thinks about and how to get into their mind a little bit. First of all, I think one of the primary objectives and one of the most primary considerations of a bass is having some type of a home territory or some type of something they can relate to, some type of a comfort mechanism to make them feel comfortable to live in their environment. Now, for some bass, that could be they like to live underneath a boat dock because it provides good shade and cover for them. Other bass may prefer to live their life in a weed bed. You take Lake Guntersville, for example. There's some bass that live on boat docks their whole life at Lake Guntersville. Some bass live on a riprap bank their whole life. Some bass live around bridge piers. Some bass live on the grass beds. So every single one of them has a different, environment they live in, but ultimately every environment they live in, it provides some type of cover and sustainability for them. Even the bass that roam around in open water all the time, the bass that roam in open water, I think they feel that open water and their ability to move and cover water is sort of their comfort zone. And again, it goes back to the other bass that lives his whole life by a stump. So every single bass is out there with that. So when you're trying to think like a bass, the first thing you have to do is you have to identify their home range and their home territory and their comfort zone a little bit out there. And that gives you a good indication where to find bass at. Let me give you a prime example here. Let's say that you're fishing down a long stretch of bank on any lake that you go to. Now, most of the time, if you are fishing down a stretch of bank out there, the fish are going to be setting up on some type of irregular feature on that particular bank. Now, that irregular feature could be like a little rock outcropping on the bank. It could be an undercut part of the bank. It could be a part of the bank where if you have a real uniform drop, maybe there's a drop that's just a little bit sharper on one part of the bank. It could be a point. It could be, any type of wood or rock cover along the bank. But they want irregular features. Those irregular features act as cover for those fish, as ambush points, because most of the time, unless a bass is an open water feeder in a clear water environment, they need an ambush point in order to attack prey, depending upon the prey that they have, because prey is different out there. But let's say, for example, if you're a bass living under a boat dock and there's bluegill living on that boat dock, if you have the ability to hide behind a piling, and when you see one of those bluegill swim past that piling, you can dart out and get it. So they need something like that. Whereas open water fish, that's a completely different personality, because I can tell you one thing about open water bass that live their whole lives out there, that the live scopers catch. These fish in open water out there, they live in harmony with the shad school. So in other words, you may have a large shad school or a large herring school out there, and you may have a little wolf pack of buddies, 2 or 3 bass out there, that they spend their whole life with that shad school. They follow that shad school all the time. The shad accept them as part of their environment. Once a day or something like that, those bass are going to charge that shad school and they're going to get their food for the day. Then they drop back and they follow the shad school. Everything's okay. Everything's right in the world. The shad have accepted that into their reality, and so are the bass. So that's one particular, viewpoint of a bass. And then, like I said, you have other ones out there that are loners searching for a crawdad underneath a rock. So point of the matter is always realize that a bass, is, going to be around some type of cover. The next thing, as far as you have to do, as far as getting inside of the mind of a bass, is you have to realize what causes them to attack something. And this is a really important one, guys, because for the most part, when you're a bass angler and you're trying to figure out, okay, what is going to make this fish bite? What do I have to do to make the fish eat this lure? First of all, realize that unless you fish at night, you are not fishing for bass that are actively feeding or actively hungry. It's my theory, and the thing that I am pretty adamant about. Bats are opportunistic, don't get me wrong, but I think most of them do their active feeding at night. The other thing that you have to think about when you're thinking about their mood and personality and what they're thinking is, if you catch a fish during the day, a lot of times you're generating that strike out of one of their senses that cause them to bite a lure out of reaction. So you've got a reaction strike. Say, for example, if a lure's moving real fast, across their ambush point, they either have to make a split-second decision to attack that lure or not. If you have a lure that a bass doesn't really know what it is, they may track it and they may look at it because they're curious. And then if they're curious and you get their attention by a lure color or maybe some type of an action you impart on the lure, you can generate that strike, again, from a reaction, point of view. And then also competition. If you have a little wolf pack of fish out there, got a dang fly in the truck here. If you have a little wolf pack of fish out there, and one of them happens to, get really fired up at a lure that you have, The other ones may join in too and try to get it just out of competition. And you have other aspects like there as far as anger and, just, other things that generate strikes from, other than a bass being hungry. So from that standpoint, that's sort of like an aspect of bass that we fully don't understand as far as the exact thing that triggers the strike. But ultimately, I think we have to realize that we simply do not know what they're thinking all the time. We think that we do, based upon how we see a bass react, but ultimately there's a lot of stuff going on that we really don't understand. I think far too often we try to equate our own intelligence as human beings into a bass's intelligence, but the intelligence that a bass has is completely different than the intelligence a human has. A bass is a master of their environment. If we are thrust into a bass environment, we look like the most stupid species on earth because we simply couldn't survive. I mean, could you find a minnow in 30 foot of water, pitch black dark? No. So from that standpoint, a bass would probably say, those humans are so stupid because they can't catch a minnow, 30 foot deep in, pitch black darkness. So you have to give credit to the fish for the intelligence they have from a survival aspect that we simply don't have out there. And I think a lot of times we have this species arrogance a little bit, that we're just better than these fish because we equate it to the life that we live versus the life that they live. But anyway, guys, the main thing is, one thing that will help you out is to try to put yourself in the bass's position. It's like, if you were a bass, try to figure out what is important to you. And what is important to you is having a food source, having some type of cover available for your own protection from other predators, having prime opportunities to spawn, all the stuff that is going to ensure survival and comfort. Bass, even though are cold-blooded creatures, I believe a bass wants to be as comfortable as they can in terms of, water temperatures, oxygen levels, everything that makes a fish comfortable. I don't think that they don't want to feel insecure and uncomfortable at any time. So anyway, guys, just a few quick thoughts with that. Hope you all are well, and we'll talk later.